Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Altrincham Talks, the Business Edit. This week we're joined by Ewen Miller, who's a partner at Calderpeel Architects here in Altrincham. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul.
Let's start, as we usually do, by telling us a little bit about you, about your background, and about what Calderpeel actually do.
It's a short answer, I suppose. I'm obviously not originally from Altrincham or Cheshire, originally from Aberdeen in Scotland. Came down many years ago when it was still black and white telly to study in London. Spent about 5 to 10 years in London, and then came up to Cheshire really at the turn of the century. And we sound so old. We got staff who weren't even born then. I joined Calderpeel about 2003, I think it was. It'd been going for about 7 years at that time. The two founders, Harry Calder and Richard Peel, set up the business. Richard Peel left by that stage to go and set up his own development company. And Harry stayed on, only enough until last year when we bought him out. But yeah, I've been an architect all that time, worked my way up the business, got to know it well. It fitted with my ethos as to how architecture should work and be run. It's evolved, obviously, as every business does over that time frame, but we've been in Altrincham through and through that time period and continue to be here. We like to think we're a relatively strong contributor to the community, both business and otherwise, and employ a few members of the community as well. Everyone we know loves working here. And yeah, I joined the bid about, it's going back about 7 years now. Right. I was chair for a long time, far too long, some might say. Now I'm as vice chair on the bid board. And yeah, very passionate about this town, and we continue to do business in it. It continues to feed us business, and we like to think that we're an important part of that community.
Brilliant. So you mentioned employing a few people. How many are in the team at Calderpeel?
We've currently got 23 staff, right, which is architecture's a strange profession because you have the massive international and national practices who tend to employ anything from 100 to almost 1,000 people. And then there's the other end of the scale where you have the one person band, where it'll be either one or two people who'll be running a business, and they can be very successful, but it's hard work, I know, because I've worked at that level. And then the mid-section, which is anything from sort of 5 up to probably about 50. We were 90 at one point.
Wow.
But that was through, we bought another practice, and it became too big. I was in charge of managing at the time, and not knowing every member of staff and their issues, if you like, or their family situations, and it just became it's a corporate entity to manage. Then you have to have rules that apply to everyone, and we are far more humane, I think, than that, and that's what we're right to focus on. So we understand the vagaries of our business. It's a creative industry, so. There are a variety of characters that need managing, and each needs managing individually, I think. We aren't a simple, machine that outputs stuff, and it's the same all the time.
And from an architectural point of view, do you specialise in particular areas?
Well, not deliberately, although we tend to, I suppose, we're most renowned for, and I call this our Chesney Hawkes School of Architecture. So no matter what we want to do, everyone wants to hear about the large housing that we do.
Yeah.
Individuals, they call them the super homes for, you'd be surprised, most people think it's footballers. We do a few, but it's not predominantly footballers. They are transient animals most of the time. So it can be for anyone. And in this area, especially Cheshire, the Northwest, it doesn't cease to amaze me the amount of entrepreneurs and people that are successful in completely different sectors. We're lucky we're based here because obviously with Audley Edge, Knutsford, Wilmslow, Hale and Bowden, there's some high worth individuals and high worth properties. So we tend to specialise in understanding how these people want to live their lives and the different requirements. But we also take that into the more standard housing. I find it more interesting, to be honest, how housing is evolving to suit family life, not just young families. It's people who are downsizing. It's people, multi-generational families and households. So I think where we specialise, and one of I'd like to say I coined this phrase. I didn't. One of my fellow directors did. When you walk into a house and you get that feeling it's a home, I think that's what we specialise in. We don't design houses for architects or for awards. We design houses for how people want to live. And again, coming back to humanity, and that's, I think, the human scale we understand. So that's where we specialise. We do other stuff as well. We do. We've got a couple of luxury retirement complexes that we're looking at in Old Edge and Knutsford. We've done some industrial sheds, Cheadle. We did a large office building in Knutsford. So we do a wide variety, but tends to focus on the residential. We like to think it's the super home, and then what we class as the complex multi-residential, where someone will come to us with a site that needs a clever solution to unlock it. A bit like we designed the scheme at the Downs, and that was all about unlocking that site's potential. A very complex, tricky piece of town planning. So we enjoy that sort of stuff.
I'll give you a call when I win the lottery.
Oh, yeah. We're not that expensive, but yes, absolutely.
So you've been involved in managing Calderpeel.
Yeah.
And that presents its own challenges as well as being a large sector, of course. Can you tell us a little bit about the growth of Calderpeel over that time and some of the challenges you've faced as a manager and as a managing partner, if you want?
I suppose anyone in the service industry would understand, any industry would understand this, that as businesses grow and develop, they can only grow and develop in response to what the market's doing around you. And we're very, if you look at the growth of the UK economy over the last probably 50 years, it's a steady, occasionally bumpy growth. But if you take the construction sector into it, it's very up and down. If you think about it, it's the biggest investment most people make. So when times are good, they're willing to do that. When times are a little bit suspect, they will pull back on those big expenses. So we do tend to find that the business peaks and troughs frequently. I would say probably on a 3 to 5 year basis. And you have to have a business that can adapt to those corporate and financial situations, market conditions. So that means obviously you're managing people, and what people want generally is consistency and a steady ship. And it's difficult occasionally to make sure that ship is steady. So we've had to make some very difficult decisions in the past. But as a manager, or rather as an architect, I was trained to colour in for a living, not to manage people. And I think it's a very difficult area to get into. But I think if you've got respect and understanding for the individuals that are contributing to your business, and you can respond to their needs, then it can be more rewarding than demanding at times.
I think one of the biggest challenges that most of the people that I talk to who are leaders and entrepreneurs, business owners, is the fact that they can be amazingly good at whatever their core skills are, in your case, architecture. And they get promoted, or it might be sales, it might be marketing, whatever it happens to be, they get promoted into a position where they're managing people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of their managers really don't understand that leading and managing people is a skill in itself, and it's not a God-given skill. It's one that you have to learn as you.
I think there's also I think there's also a natural affinity to it. So, being promoted outside your skill set is a problem that's endemic in an awful lot of business, especially our business. I mean, we've had staff who've been hollering to be promoted to sort of managerial positions, and you do say to them, "Are you sure you want to do that?" Knowing full well that they probably don't have the skill set. And I also think no matter how many leadership or management courses you put them on, with the greatest respect to some of the trainers and the people we've been involved with, there is an inherent ability that you have to be able to do it. That can be trained and honed and evolved into something far more mature and more sensitive in terms of manager. But if that inherent ability isn't there in the first place, or it's very difficult to pull it out, sometimes you're forcing people to do things that they don't want to do. Whereas we found, again, over trial and error, that to keep the right skill set in the business, you need to just then essentially say to certain individuals, keep doing what you're doing, do it better, do it well, and we'll just pay you more. You don't want the stress of knowing that, so-and-so's off sick today, or this person's got this issue, or this deadline's not being met. You concentrate on what you do. And we found that by keeping those individuals at that level, paying them more because they're doing better work has been a success to the business. And we've retained, we've got really staff who've been there some maybe not as long as me, but certainly a lot getting into sort of over 10, some up into the 20s year service, because we know how they work, they know how we work. We've sort of essentially made them unemployable by anyone else because we've employed them for so long.
Yeah.
And we do certainly try and instill that into our staff, and then you can also spot the other individuals who are essentially exceptional people managers, and we've got a couple of them as well, which is great because you can start to delegate these to some.
I think ultimately it's about getting the right people on the bus and in the right seats, isn't it?
Exactly, absolutely.
And it's one of the things that we often talk about. When I had a situation a few weeks ago with one of our software clients where they were looking at promoting somebody because the manager was moving up, so they had to promote somebody to get out to their position. And he said at the time, there's only one person who I think is probably good enough to be put into a managerial position, but had no interest at all in being a manager, and they almost forced him into doing it. And you need to stop and think about what you're doing because it's not his skill set.
Yeah.
So let's look at it in a different way. I think also getting the right staff in the first place is a challenge for a lot of people. The employment market is quite a buyer's market in terms of employees themselves. It's an employee market. Do you find that there's challenges in finding the right people and keeping them, incentivizing them?
There was. As the business was growing probably 15 years ago, one of our biggest problems was the black hole draw Manchester City Centre. So the talent that comes out of the universities in Manchester and surrounding areas, the younger staff want to be where it's at in Manchester. And we were on the outskirts in this little leafy suburb called Altrincham, which at the time is unrecognisable now. So that was one of the difficulties we had. People would turn up for interview and we'd sit down with them and offer them competitive salaries, but they'd look at it and say, well, yeah, but I can go and work in town and got this and that on my doorstep, whereas Altrincham really's just got Marks and Spencer's and that's about it. So, and a few old pubs. So really seeing the change in Altrincham over the last few years has benefited our business immeasurably, because we're getting younger and younger students coming to us now wanting to work here. They think Altrincham's a great place to be, and that's one of the main reasons we managed to retain staff. Also looking after them and trying to move with looking at this was management techniques and the way people work carefully and closely. So I, for one, I start work early in the morning. I'm usually in about sort of between 7:30 and 8. Gets to 5 o'clock. I'm getting old, so I finish about then. So I can't do much longer than that. But other staff work different shift patterns. So the idea of having a 5-day week, 9 till 6 or whatever it is for 5 days, I think it was originally designed by Henry Ford to look at manufacturing cars. So back in the 20s, and we're still using that system. So we've now introduced what we've cleverly called a well-being day, which is a day off a week for the team. And it's constantly evolving, because this was post-COVID when we realised that everyone can work from home. But as a business like ours, we need what we call touch points with the team, because we need to communicate ideas and we need to ensure that design's not a linear process. You don't start here, do your first sketch and then finish it a week later. You go around cul-de-sacs and all the things. And experience is important in that, so you know when you're going down the wrong route. But for some of the staff who sort of at the start of their career, they need that mentoring and contact and exchange of ideas. They bring as much to the table as we do. But if they're in a silo at home, well, it's tricky. So we decided to offer the Wellbeing Day. That's changing now, so we're still offering it, but we're all in on a Monday, we're all in on a Friday, and we stagger the Wellbeing Day between the 3 days in the middle. And we're quite, I wouldn't say robust about it, because I think I've worked the last 3, but we're trying to be strong about it. Say, look, this is a well-being day. It's a day for you to do what it is you ever want to do. If there's a major disaster, then that needs to be dealt with, or if a client's demanding, then be flexible with this in the same way as we are. And I think that's helped us as well to retain staff. I know certainly our industry is circled by the recruitment vultures frequently. And a lot of even the senior team will get phone calls saying, oh, we've got this great opportunity. Yeah, I don't now, because I'm well beyond that. And the conversation may well be they get a bit more money, might even be closer to where they live or what have you, a bit intrigued. But as soon as the what's the working hours question comes up. I'm not suggesting this is the only reason people want to stay with us. It becomes, it's a very good way of retaining them, because then the phone goes dead because I've got to work an extra day and don't want to do that. Saying that, the hours that the people work, we're not, they're deadline driven. So we said to them, if you've got to this deadline you've got to meet, then as long as you're meeting that deadline, crack on. So, yeah, and I think we're small enough to be able to adapt to how people want to live their lives. And, silly things like important things like picking up kids and attending. In my day, parents' evening was an evening. Now it's not. It's about 3 PM. Just being respectful of all that. And because we've got an awful lot of retained staff who are getting slightly older, it's care for elderly parents is the issue now. It's probably the biggest issue we've got in the office. It doesn't affect everyone at the same time, but you find that I've had it. So those issues and understanding that life wasn't just work, it's about everything else around it.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's been a lot of debate, hasn't there, recently, especially since COVID, about whether people should be allowed to work from home, what kind of flexibility they should have, whether they should all go back into the office or not. Jim Ratcliffe famously at Manchester United said everybody had to go back into the office. And I do think there's something to be said for that human interaction when you're in an office environment with someone, they used to call it the water cooler moment, so people. And I think, especially in a creative industry, just having those conversations can be immeasurable in terms of the benefits to any particular project, to the organisation in general. And as much as you say technologies come on, Teams and Zoom and all that are great, but you can have those little moments.
Well, we tend to have, if a project comes into the office and the early stage, we'll arrange what we call design charrette. And invariably we'll get more than half the staff turning up for this thing. And it's usually an hour long. And we'll set out the brief, and then there's tracing paper and we just sketch. And every time, without exception, whatever comes out of that conversation is fundamentally way better than if I was to sit in a room by myself, and I'm experienced, and design for 2 weeks. Because I'll design for 2 weeks and missed right at the start that one idea that someone else had.
Yeah.
And you bring that back, and it is you do need those contact moments. But by the same token, I think the attitude about working from home and wellbeing days, all that sort of stuff, I do believe there's the lowest common denominator gets the press. So it's always the individual who's not typed enough, done enough keystrokes on the computer, and who monitors that stuff is beyond me. And they get the press because they're the bottom of the barrel. And I think if you judge your staff by the lowest common denominator and don't respect them, then they'll just wong. And you're always going to get. We've had some in the past, and every organisation has occasional individual. You think, well, they're not really fitting into our ethos, and it's very much a team effort. So we think that's how it should be, but we also think there is flexibility. So we do the wellbeing day. We're thinking of changing the working from home concept, because we had that once a week as well, so people could be out of the office twice a week. We're now thinking, well, we'll do the work from home maybe once a month, unless you get a sofa delivered or something, one of these situations. And I think most people are quite, up for that. But it's evolving all the time.
I mean, there's some great case studies out there. I think one of the most profound for me was a book written by a guy called Reed Hastings, who founded Netflix, called No Rules Rules, and they've taken it really to the ultimate. Okay. They went through a restructure in the early 2000s when there was a crash. They only had 120 employees at the time. They realised they didn't have any bad employees. They only had good employees and excellent employees. So they had to chop 40 of the good employees out of the business, and they thought productivity would go down, but the 80 remained were amazing employees, not just through the technical skills, but from their attitudes and values, and they'd go the extra mile sort of thing as well. And their productivity actually went up. After the first few weeks of grieving for the people who left, productivity went up, and then they got rid of things like structured holidays, so that you didn't have a specific number of holidays. You could take as many or as few as you wanted.
Oh, so that's interesting.
And actual number of holidays that people took overall went down, not up. As long as the only proviso was, as long as they booked them far enough in advance, and it didn't harm the company when they took days off for any particular projects that we were working on. And that worked for them. There's all sorts of different rules that they've got rid of.
Great idea.
To give me, because ultimately their business is about creativity, as yours is. And they wanted to release the creativity from all the rules and structure and procedures that they previously had in place. And there are obviously some things that need to happen, as there are in architecture and any other profession, but they got rid of all the other sort of...
Fascinating.
Yeah, and it's a really great book for everybody.
I think we all know the working. I mean, as I said, I started when it was, black and white tele almost, but I mean, we had drawing boards and, people used to smoke in the office. I mean, it's just madness when you think about it now. So, I have an iPad. I do all my design work on my iPad. I carry all my projects with me in a device that's buying huge. So I think, therefore, there's this sort of smart working and adaptive working that we can all employ. But there are those, as I said, touch points that you need, I think, in any industry, especially the service sector, where you've got to get together with your employees or your team and work together to try and get to the best solution as possible. But yeah, the idea of, my worry about removing structured holidays, and we do have holiday time, obviously, but is that we do have some individuals now that, and include myself in this, that you could end up with that strange and crazy situation where you look back and think, well, I've had 4 days off this year. What am I going to do now? I mean, we changed it not long ago from renewing annual leave at the end of the year. Now it's your birth month, because we found that come Christmas, everyone was going, I've got all this holiday pay. December was decimated. So we stopped that. And that seems to, it's a slightly crazy headache to have on occasions, but, with systems you can adopt to get around that. But, we're a people-driven profession. We design for people. We're lucky enough to be honoured to be able to create spaces that people are going to live in. So we need the people that work for us to be managed in equally as a humane way, and listen to them and understand what motivates them, gets them boom. Because unfortunately, our business, and most architects think will attest to this, it's not awash with money as everyone thinks it is. Salaries, aren't fantastic. They're okay. I'm not going to moan about it, but they're not at the legal professional level or the medical professional level, which everyone sort of holds us up to. So you've got to enjoy what you do. Yeah. You've really got to come into work thinking, I'm going to be doing something to do that's interesting me and challenging me and gets me out of the bed.
We've done a lot of work around employee motivation as well. And a lot of people think that money is the main motivator. And look, obviously it's important. And when you look at something like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the money fulfills the basic need, which is a roof over your head, food on the table, etc. But then after that, there are things like that came into the survey, like feeling like you're part of something, feeling like you belong to something that's bigger than just you, understanding how your role fits into the success of the business or a particular project, having your voice heard. All those sort of things are really important to people once you've got over that initial, I've got enough to do what I want to do in life sort of thing. So having that kind of environment where you can encourage that is really important, I think.
Very much so. I think that I've got great admiration for people who manage much bigger businesses and do it in such a creative way as the Netflix scenario you outlined. I don't think I have the bandwidth or the intelligence to manage that many people. I've now got a team of guys and girls who are taking on these roles. And what's fascinating to see is some of the, we went through a management buyout a year ago. We're now going through another restructure where we're going to have about 6 of us running the business, and be able to release some of the problems that myself and my other business partners have to the younger generation, who are hungry, far more dynamic, and have got far better understanding of how the market's changing and how people change. Marketing's a great example as well. There used to be the day where you would have to go to every networking event, stand around with a badge on your lapel, thinking, who am I going to speak to here? And you'd end up usually speaking to the architect in the room, or it was the dreadful things to go to. Whereas now we know with social media and other platforms that marketing's a multifaceted thing. Because for us, for instance, going out and finding a client for a super home, you can't go to a super home conference and meet these people. They come to you because you've got to make yourself as sticky and as visible as possible to that market. And they come to you. So, and then it's giving those individuals the best service they ever expected. Because we usually find that those wealthy individuals funnily enough, have friends who are in a similar scenario. They'll come to their house and say, so it's that sort of recommendation. And one of our goals is to try and get, recommendations from clients. That's what we want. We really, really want to sort of push the business. But yeah, managing it is a constant challenge, but it brings with it its own delights as well. On
I can imagine. And I mean, just from, obviously you've got a great big double fronted summer premises on one of the main streets in Altrincham. I've walked past it many a time and I thought, what a fantastic place that looks like inside. So creating a fantastic environment for your staff to work in must be core to you as well. And obviously you're an architect's practice, so why would you do something?
But again, this is a prime example of where sometimes you have to trust in those that are working with you, because we own the building. We're currently occupying too much space, so we might actually move soon, funnily enough. But one of the because we think it'd make a better showroom. But one of the discussions was originally to move into that space and open up the shop front. And I said, well, we don't need a shop front as an architect's practice, because if people want to find out what we do, they go online or they know. So it took not a great deal of persuading, but I wasn't convinced. But once we'd done it, obviously it's obvious. Now people always ask us, well, do you get an awful lot of passing trade? We do and we don't. We have people at the very start coming in wondering how much the coffee was. So they think it was a coffee shop, which is fine, because getting a service industry onto the street front is a peculiar thing in our sort of urban psyche. But now we're sort of a bit more established, even though we've been in that building for, about 10, 15 years before we moved down to that floor. It does give you a presence, and does give you, we do have a few people, someone came in today about some alteration work. So you do get that sort of connection. So if we do move, we're hopeful we'll be able to find something of similar nature with a shop front or some sort of presence that we can identify with. But yeah, part of it's a bit like when people come into your house. Thankfully, I've redone mine so people will get a feel for what I do. But everyone expects you to live in a mansion or something that you've created, and not everyone, none of us do. But certainly the office space is a good place to sort of make sure that you're creating a space that works for us. And also, the idea of people, we do sit in rows, but just moving people around and getting that dynamism in the workspace is quite important.
I think having an environment where people actually enjoy coming to work is the most important thing. And I think you're right. You might not get much people who walk past and go, oh, I need something up going there. I think the brand is really important. So people see the name, people see the brand, and people see what you stand for when they're looking inside your business. And I'm sure, although you might not get passing trade per se, there'll be plenty of people who probably pick up the phone afterwards to you as potential clients.
I think it's just
having it seen.
It's another hook, isn't it? It's another hook, another way of making yourself a little bit more sticky, and it is sort of displaying your wares on the high street, which I think, especially now that the retail sector, F&B and all that, is not necessarily suffering in Altrincham, but certainly nationally. So I think we have to think about some of these units and what they're going to be used to, and understand that sometimes it's fine to have you've got the insurance company down on the corner here. They occupy two main fronts in Altrincham. And it makes them very visible. So I think there's an element of that. Granted, you may well go in and shop insurance more frequently than you do on architects, but I think that the understanding that these spaces need to come to life, because previously it was 4 windows and a boarded up or sealed up fake Georgian front door, and it was just a dead facade onto the street. No one engaged with it, just walked past it between the kitchen showroom and the sort of chip shop at the end of the street. So to suddenly enliven it, I think is great. And we if we can bring that either there or wherever we end up, then that's all good.
Good stuff. So we're almost out of time, but unbelievably, it feels like we've only just started. Just three questions or so to end with. The first one is a slightly loaded question. I know you mentioned it earlier on, but as chair and vice chair of the bid, you've been involved with Altrincham for a long while. And we've talked about people as well, and attracting the right people into your practice from creating a great environment. But it's important both inside and outside. What part do you think the bid's played in over the last few years in creating the right environment to attract employees for you and for wider business in the time?
I mean, it's never just one player in a town
No.
of this nature, as you know. And I'm probably the wrong person to ask because I'm also going to extol the virtues of the bid, having been involved with it for so long. But visiting other towns and having spoken to other town centre representatives who are looking to set up bids and things like that, I think without the bid, we often say this, especially when we get close to reballot time, it would be lovely to run an Altrincham without the bid and an Altrincham with the bid. Then you'd have a very, very clear understanding of what the value of that is. I can see it clearly because, I mean, we were here prior to the bid's existence. It brings the stuff that's needed to make a community. And I don't mean that in a sort of touchy-feely way. I mean that in a pragmatic way, from whether it's the physicality of the planters and the cleaning the streets or the more ethereal stuff, but equally as important stuff like purple flag. It just, and the Christmas lights, it just brings all the stuff that a vibrant, thriving business community needs into the town, control it, and coalesces it. Now, that doesn't mean the bid does all these things, but it knows how to facilitate, and the team are very good at facilitating things that work and putting the right people into the right position. So I think, it's been, in my opinion, invaluable to the town and the community. And I think that we've had a few times where people are querying, why am I paying this towards the bid? It's usually a nominal sum in terms of our turnover. And even if it's just attracting staff, as it does to my business, it's paid for itself, many times over.
Great. Okay. Two final quick-fire questions.
I'll be quick, promise.
If you had one piece of advice to offer to another business owner who is either just starting out as a business owner or has been around for a while, what would your best piece of advice be to another business owner?
Be clear about what you're doing and ensure that you are doing it the best in that sector, or if not differently, and set yourself goals and targets so you can look back in a year, 6 months or 2 years and determine very quickly whether you've achieved those goals or if not, what you need to do to change them. I think too many people have an idea, crack on with it and don't sit back and think, am I doing this right or wrong?
And finally, in a similar vein, advice-wise, if you could offer an 18-year-old Ewen Miller one piece of advice, what would your advice be to your younger self?
Well, I said to you, they're going to be a solicitor, I think. No, stick with it, I think, because it'll be hard and it'll be choppy at times, but at the end of your career, you'll still get to colour in for a living. And that's what keeps me going. Those challenges that this sector allows me to face and solve and be able to present something to a client body or a couple and give them something that they never imagined they'd have. That's, we get to walk around our sketches, and I can't tell you the goosebumps that gives me when I walk around something I sketched, might be a few years ago, and it's real. But yeah, I'd say stick with it and enjoy it. Yeah,
I could probably talk to you for hours, Ewen.
So, thank
you very much.
Thank you for your time. It's been lovely. Yeah.